It was just another quiet morning in a small coastal town. The kind where time seemed to move slower, like the sea breeze had whispered to the clock to take it easy. Inside a little diner named Maggie's Place, sunlight filtered through dusty windows and landed softly on an old grand piano tucked into the far corner. It looked out of place, like a forgotten dream. Once shiny and full of life, now it sat silent, collecting dust between shifts. But at night, when the dinner rush died down, something magical sometimes happened. Lila, the diner's main waitress, would sit at that piano after closing. She wasn't famous, didn't wear fancy clothes, and didn't play for big crowds. Just the cook, a few regulars, and sometimes no one at all. But when she played, it felt like the whole world paused to listen. Her fingers danced across the keys like they remembered something beautiful, something long gone. She had been playing since she was a kid, taught herself mostly, using second-hand books and broken keyboards found in thrift stores. Her dad used to say music was her first language. He worked long hours as a mechanic, barely making enough to keep food on the table, but always made sure she had something to practice on. Then life changed. Her dad got sick. Lila dropped everything to care for him. School, lessons, dreams, all put aside. After he passed, she stayed in the area, working at the diner by day and playing piano by night, just to keep moving forward. Hundreds of miles away, in a city that never slept, someone else was having a very different morning. In a sleek high-rise office, a man signed what could be the biggest deal of his life. Millions were changing hands, headlines would follow, and his name would soon be everywhere again. But as he set the pen down, something strange happened. He paused. He stared out the window, watching the city below, and thought of something completely unrelated. A small-town diner, a quiet girl with wild curls, and the sound of a piano on a slow Tuesday night. He hadn't heard that sound in years, but he remembered how it made him feel. Like he mattered. Like he was more than money and meetings. That memory hit harder than he expected. He shook it off and walked away. There was business to handle, parties to attend, but deep down, a part of him missed something he couldn't quite name, and neither he nor Lila knew it yet, but their lives were about to cross again. Back in time, before the fame, before the money, before everything changed, she was just a girl with a dream and not much else. Lila had always known music was her thing. It wasn't about being famous or rich. It was about how it made her feel, like she could say things without even speaking. Her dad used to sit by the window while she played, fixing car parts with grease-covered hands, smiling like he was listening to something holy. But life doesn't ask what you want before it starts taking things away. Her father got sicker. Bills piled up. School became a luxury she couldn't afford. So she left. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She packed the few things that mattered and moved to Portland, where she found work at a diner, a place with a broken AC, old vinyl floors, and a dusty upright piano tucked beside the window. She worked nights, serving burgers and coffee to tired truck drivers and late shift workers. And during slow hours, she'd sit at that piano, just play, for herself, for them, for anyone who needed it. That's where he first heard her. He wasn't from around there. He wore nice shoes and carried a leather notebook like he had big plans. He came in one rainy night soaking wet, looking more lost than hungry. He ordered black coffee and sat near the piano. At first, he just listened. Then he started coming back, every Thursday, sat in the same spot. Watched her fingers move like they knew secrets. They started talking after a few weeks. About music, about life, about dreams. She told him about Juilliard, how she used to imagine walking those halls, playing for crowds that filled big concert halls. He told her about his startup idea, how he believed he could change the world with code and timing. They were different, but somehow they fit. He promised he'd help her get into a music school, said he'd come back for her once he got things going. She believed him. Everyone needs someone to believe in, even if just for a little while. Then he left. Phone calls stopped. Letters went unanswered. Time passed. She waited for months, thinking maybe the distance was too much, that he got busy, that he'd return, but he never did. So she moved on. Had to. She married a good man, a bartender who loved music almost as much as she did. Together, they built a quiet life. Nothing fancy, but full of love. She still played piano, mostly for their kids now, taught them chords when they were old enough to reach the keys. And somewhere far away, in a city full of lights and noise, he kept climbing, became someone people recognized, shook hands with powerful people, made deals worth millions. But every so often, in the silence between meetings, he'd hear something. He didn't know where it came from. A melody, a voice, her laugh. It reminded him of who he was before success rewrote the rules, before life taught him to forget soft things like music and simple moments. He tried finding her once, then again. Old numbers didn't work. Addresses led nowhere. Eventually, he stopped looking. Thought maybe she wanted to be forgotten. Neither of them knew it yet, but the past wasn't done with them. Not yet. Time moves differently when you're not looking. For Lila, it passed slowly at first. Those early days after he left, when she kept checking her mailbox like it owed her something. But then, life did what it always does. It pulled her forward, whether she was ready or not. She stayed in Portland for a few more years, still working at the diner, still playing piano when the place was quiet. Music became her way of talking when words weren't enough. She met someone new, a bartender named Tom, who smiled with his whole face and didn't ask too many questions about the past. He loved music too, though he'd never admit it out loud. He played guitar some nights just for fun, and sometimes they'd play together, her on piano, him on strings. It wasn't perfect, but it was warm. They got married in a small ceremony by the water, nothing fancy, just friends, a few old songs, and the smell of salt in the air. They adopted 2 kids, sisters who needed a home. Life wasn't easy, but it was full. And even on hard days, Lila would sit at the piano and play until the world felt calmer again. Back east, miles away in a city that never slept, he was building something big. The startup took off faster than anyone expected. Investors came knocking. Offers rolled in. Soon, his name started showing up in magazines and online articles. People called him a genius, a visionary, a self-made success story. But none of that made the silence any softer. He lived in a high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of everything. Yet somehow, he felt like he was looking in from the outside. Every time a piano piece played in a cafe or a movie, he'd stop. Listen longer than most people would. Try to hold on to something he couldn't name. He thought about her often, Lila, the girl with wild curls and fire in her fingers, the one who played without needing an audience, the one who made him believe there was more to life than money and meetings. He tried finding her once, then twice. Old phone numbers were disconnected. Emails bounced back. Even social media had no trace of her. It was like she vanished. Maybe she wanted to be left alone. Maybe he deserved that. So he stopped looking. Instead, he buried himself deeper into work. Raised millions, launched apps, shook hands with people who mattered, spoke at conferences where everyone listened. But in quiet moments, on long flights, late nights, early mornings, he'd hear it again, that sound. Her sound, a simple melody, a voice that once reminded him of who he really was. And even as the world cheered his success, part of him knew he'd left something behind, something real, something worth more than all the money he ever made. Neither of them knew it yet, but fate wasn't done with either of them, not by a long shot. It was just another rainy Thursday when it happened. Lila didn't know that this night would change everything. She was working late again, wiping down counters, filling coffee mugs, and humming to herself between orders. The diner had seen better days, peeling paint, creaky floors, and an old jukebox that mostly played static now. But the people who came here weren't looking for luxury, they were looking for comfort. And Lila gave them both, good food and better company. After closing time, she sat at the piano like always. The kids had grown up a bit now, old enough to stay home alone without too much worry. She'd promised Tom she wouldn't stay out too late, but playing piano was the only time her mind could finally relax. She started with something slow, soft, notes that filled the empty space like light through fogged glass. Then she picked up the pace, letting her fingers find their rhythm. It felt like talking to someone she used to know. She didn't notice the camera phone at first. A young man, one of the regulars, was recording from the corner. He wasn't doing it for fame or money, just because the music moved him. Later that night, he uploaded the video to his page with a simple caption. "This woman plays like she's telling a story. You should hear her." And then, something strange happened. The video started getting views, not thousands, not millions, but enough. People shared it with friends. Some added comments about how long it had been since they heard real music. Others asked who she was, where she lived. One message read, "You deserve to be heard." It wasn't viral fame, but it was attention, real attention. Meanwhile, far away in a city full of lights and noise, a man sat up straight in his chair. His phone buzzed with a notification, but it wasn't from a business deal or a news outlet. It was from someone he barely knew, someone who had shared a video link with a short message. "Thought you might want to see this." He clicked it, and there she was. Older, yes, but still the same fire in her eyes. Same way of playing like every note meant something. Like she remembered every moment she'd ever lived, and played them back one by one. He couldn't breathe for a second. He watched the whole video, then played it again. He stared at the screen, heart beating faster than it had in years. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a businessman or a billionaire or a name in a headline. He felt like a man who had made a mistake he never got to fix. His hands shook as he searched for more. Old records, old posts, trying to find a way to reach her, to say something, anything. But what do you say after all this time? That he'd tried? That he'd failed? That he never forgot? He didn't know yet. All he knew was he had to go back to that little town, back to that piano, back to her. He didn't sleep that night, sat at his desk, staring out the window at the city lights below. The video kept replaying in his head. Her hands on those keys, her eyes closed, lost in the music. That same look she used to get when everything else faded away, just her and the piano. It hit him harder than he expected. He booked a flight the harm, next morning. One-way ticket. Didn't tell anyone where he was going. Just packed a coat, a notebook, and the old letter he'd kept in his drawer for years, the one he never sent. The town looked smaller now, or maybe he just felt bigger standing in it. He walked through the streets slowly, like he was afraid to break something, past the old bookstore, the corner cafe, the park bench where they used to sit after closing time, talking about nothing and everything all at once. Then he saw it. Maggie's place, still standing. A little more worn, but still there. He pushed. The door opened. It creaked like it remembered him. Inside, things hadn't changed much. Same cracked vinyl seats. Same soft hum of an old radio behind the counter. And there, wiping down tables in a simple apron, was her time stopped. She looked up. Their eyes met. And for a moment, neither of them moved. It wasn't shock, not anger, not even surprise. It was recognition, like two pieces of the same puzzle seeing each other again, after being lost for years. He walked toward the counter slowly, sat in the same seat he always used to take. She didn't say anything at first, just set a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked at it, then at her. "I saw the video," he said quietly. She nodded, like she already knew. "Didn't think anyone would ever care," she replied, voice calm but tired. They should have, he said. You were always meant to be heard. They sat there, in silence for a bit. The kind that doesn't feel empty, it feels full. Full of things they couldn't say out loud yet. Then she asked, not looking at him, "Why now?" He didn't have a clean answer. No fancy speech. No rehearsed. "Excuse? I thought I lost you," he finally said. "Thought you left me behind." She looked at him then, straight in the eyes. So did I. That hurt more than he expected. They talked, for hours, about the past, about the letters that never arrived, the calls that went unanswered. Turns out, she had tried. A lot. But somehow, the world got in the way. Addresses changed, numbers disconnected. Life happened, not betrayal, not forgetfulness, just missteps, one after another, until they both gave up. When she finished her shift, she stood beside him, looked outside as the sun started setting. "I'm not the same girl, you know," she said softly. "I wouldn't want you to be," he replied. A pause. Then, gently, almost like a question. "Still play?" She smiled. Small, but real. A little. He nodded toward the piano. She hesitated, then walked over, sat down, and as her fingers touched the keys, something came back. Not just the music, but the feeling. Of being known, of being home. She played the first few notes. He joined in, together again. The music filled the room like sunlight through an open window, soft, warm, and full of something neither of them had felt in years. They played together like no time had passed, like they hadn't spent decades apart. Her fingers knew the keys. His hands remembered the rhythm. The piano wasn't just wood and wire, it was memory, emotion, healing. After the last note faded, there was silence again. Not awkward, not heavy, just stillness. He looked at her. She didn't look back right away, just kept her hands on the keys like she was afraid to let go. "I used to think about this," he said quietly. "Coming back, hearing you play again." She gave a small smile, eyes still on the piano. "I used to dream about playing somewhere bigger," she said. "Not just this diner, not just late nights after work. Thought maybe I'd be someone by now." "You were always someone," he said. "To me, anyway." She finally turned to him. There was no anger in her eyes, just sadness and understanding. "But that's not how life works, does it?" she said. "You don't get to choose what sticks. You just live and hope you make the right choices along the way." He nodded slowly. He wanted to say more, apologize, explain. But what could he really say? That he tried, that he never meant to leave her behind. It wouldn't fix what was broken. Instead, he asked, "Do you still love it?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Even when I stopped playing for others, I never stopped playing for myself." That made him smile. They sat in silence for a bit longer. Outside, the rain started again. Light drops tapping against the windows. The kind of rain that didn't chase people inside, but made them want to stay there. She stood up, stretching a little. "I should lock up," she said. He got up too. "I'll walk you out." As they stepped outside, the night air was cool. The streetlights buzzed softly. A few cars rolled by, slow and sleepy. She looked at him again. "Why did you come back?" she asked. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Because I realized I left something behind," he said. "And not just you. It was everything you reminded me of. Who I was before all this noise. Before money, meetings, deals. You made me remember what mattered." She studied his face, then smiled. Not the sad one from earlier, but something lighter. "Well," she said, "at least you remembered." They stood there a moment longer. Then she hugged him. Warm, quick, real. Not like strangers, not like lovers. more like two people who once shared something deep and weren't afraid to admit it still mattered. She waved goodbye as she walked home. Watched her go. Then he turned and walked toward the town's only motel, feeling lighter than he had in years. Not because things were fixed, but because, for the first time in a long time, he was facing the truth. And that was a start. He didn't stay long. A few more days in the town, walking familiar streets, sitting at the same diner booth, listening to her play when she let him. He didn't try to fix what couldn't be fixed, didn't ask for anything more than what she was willing to give. They talked, laughed sometimes, shared old memories like they were flipping through a photo album neither had seen in years, and slowly he began to heal. She wasn't going back with him. That part was clear from the start. She had a life here now, her husband, her kids, the rhythm of small-town mornings and piano keys worn smooth by time. But she didn't push him away either. Just let him sit in the quiet space between them, where the past met the present without blame or guilt. One morning, before he left, he handed her an envelope. "No pressure," he said. "Just something I wish I'd done a long time ago." Inside was a letter, handwritten, not fancy, just honest words. Apologies, thanks, a promise to do better with whatever came next. And a check, not for fame or stages or big concerts, just enough to help her start teaching music, to pass on what she knew, to open a small class for kids who couldn't afford lessons but had the same fire in their fingers that she once did. She looked up at him, eyes soft. "I don't need your money," she said gently. "I know," he replied, "but maybe this way, part of me gets to stay here, even after I'm gone." She didn't argue, just folded the letter, tucked it into her bag, and smiled. Later that day, he got on the bus, heading out of town, not quietly, not sadly, but with peace he hadn't known he needed. Back in his city, he went back to work, but different now, less chasing, more giving. He started funding music programs for young people, especially those who had talent but no chance, named one after the little town, called it the Open Key Project. And somewhere far away, in that same town, Lila hung a sign outside her house, "Piano lessons, all welcome." Kids started coming, some shy, some loud, all full of dreams. She taught them chords, songs, patience. And every now and then, when the sun was setting and the air felt right, she'd play a song that only she understood. Something old, something sweet, something true. Neither of them ever saw each other again, but they both carried the music forward, because some stories don't end in forever. Some end in moments, moments that change you, and that was theirs.